Science is a public evening science seminar produced out of UAF Northwest Campus, and tonight we're having an I Love Lucy kind of night, and so I'm back in the very back of the little library here at campus, and by UAF Alaska Sea Grant. So we're out of the home office today. Tonight's speaker, we have two speakers, and the format's going to be a little bit different. I think they're hoping for more some discussion after they're done, so I'm looking forward to that. And we have tonight's speaker on the advertisement. It says Danielle Stickman. She's here, and she is currently in Sitka. She is the Indigenous specialist for the Interagency Arctic Research Policy Committee, and they go by the acronym IARPC. And they are with the Executive Office of the White House, is my understanding. So we're very pleased, and they are here in Alaska. Turns out Danielle has been spending some time in Shishmaref, so that's very exciting to learn about here for us. And sounds like she had a great time, who wouldn't? And also speaking tonight is Meredith Livelihoods. She is currently in Anchorage in her house, which, by the way, if you're wondering about those pink lights, I was, and I asked, and those pink lights are because she's growing her starts for her garden. So awesome, Meredith. And Meredith is the analyst for IARPC, for the Interagency group. And I think there's a lot of acronyms and a lot of big words for me, and they will explain it all and make it clear, but it's really important discussion that they're going to have, and the information that they're bringing us. It's sort of how to get a voice as we go forward for research in the Arctic, and that is something that the Bering Strait certainly is interested in. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Danielle. Is that you're going to go first?
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you so much and welcome.
Thank you, Gay, and thank you everyone for attending tonight. And thank you for the invitation. This is a really nice pleasure to be here with everyone. And so first off, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge that the circumpolar Arctic is the contemporary and ancestral home to many different Indigenous peoples. As those who are working in or residing in the Arctic, we recognize these lands and waters as the mostly unceded traditional homelands of Indigenous peoples. And IARPC, the Interagency Arctic Research Policy Committee, honors and recognizes the place-based knowledge of Arctic Indigenous peoples and non-Arctic Indigenous peoples, and their ancestral and contemporary stewardship of their homelands. And so my name is Danielle Stickman. I am Dina'ina in Koyukon Athabaskan from Nundalton, which is located in Bristol Bay. My mother is Karen Evanoff from Nundalton, and my father is Danny Stickman from Galena on the Yukon River. I'm the Indigenous Engagement Specialist at IARPC, and I currently live on lands that have been traditionally stewarded by Dina'ina Athabaskans in Anchorage. For right now, I'm in Sitka for an artist in residence, and my passion lies with working to support healthy ecosystems and the well-being of humans, our earth, and animals. I'm grateful to be here today to share some information about the draft Arctic research plan that is available for public comment. And I'll hand it over to Meredith.
Thanks, Danielle, and thank you, Gay, for inviting us. It really is a pleasure to be here and an honor to have everyone here and get to speak. So thank you all for listening. My name is Meredith Livelihoods. I grew up in Texas. My parents, Karen and Jim Livelihoods, still live in Texas and miss me a lot because I moved to Anchorage, Alaska 4 years ago and really love it. Plan to be here for a good while. And so I'm currently living and working on the Dina'ina homelands. And like Gay mentioned, I'm a project analyst for IARPC. And I really care about Alaska and the Arctic. And I like to think about ways to improve current processes for priority setting and decision making, particularly around research.
Thank you, Meredith. So how is this relevant to your region? Warming in the Arctic region is happening at twice the rate of the rest of the globe, and it's relevant, timely, and flexible research that is essential. So this is an opportunity for IARPC to serve the Arctic community in a meaningful way and to foster a more balanced relationship with Alaskans, tribes, and Indigenous entities and other non-federal partners. And with this new draft plan, IARPC aims to be more responsive to Arctic communities by listening and including their ideas when identifying strategic priorities. And so we have not done this perfectly, but IARPC is trying and will keep trying to do this in a better way. And communities in Alaska have firsthand, on the ground, and in some cases, multi-generational knowledge and experience that is critical to informing how research is conducted, on what and how the results can be used for their own decision-making.
Thanks. And I'll just add that, like Danielle said, IARPC is still learning how to develop more equitable research processes and policies, and that's one reason we're here and trying to have discussions as much as possible so we can continue to learn and grow, because IARPC is a reflection of those who participate, who can participate in it, and its processes. And the more voices that can be and are included, and the more relevant the plan is to those living in Alaska, then the more that IARPC and the Arctic Research Plan that we'll be talking about will accomplish for the benefit of the whole Arctic region. And so I think we're ready for the next slide. Thanks. So I'll try to explain what IARPC is to those who have never heard about it. It can seem really confusing, even to those who have been working in it for several years. It can also seem confusing, but I will say that the IARPC staff, including Danielle and myself and Larry here and the rest of them, are very approachable and really want to make IARPC accessible and relevant to those outside of the government and academia as well. So if you have any questions, you can interrupt me and ask, or ask later, reach out, email, because it's a lot to try to absorb quickly because it is complex. So again, IARPC is the Interagency Arctic Research Policy Committee, and it sits within the Office of the President. And it brings together leaders from 16 different agencies, departments, and offices across the US federal government to enhance Arctic research. So it's kind of like a hub for those different entities that have some type of Arctic interest in the federal government. And it was created under the Arctic Research and Policy Act of 1984. And the act called for a comprehensive national policy focused on research needs and objectives in the Arctic, and it established IARPC and also the Arctic Research Commission to help implement that act. So every 5 years, IARPC creates a new 5-year Arctic Research Plan, which is the main reason we're here today. And the plan is created in consultation with the Arctic Research Commission, the governor of the state of Alaska, the residents of the Arctic, the private sector, and public interest groups. And the plan identifies critical areas where the US research supports US policy from global scales, and looks at areas where federal investment from community to global scales, excuse me, and looks at where federal investment can be enhanced through interagency collaboration. And it aims to advance knowledge and decision support for the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. It's implemented in large part through the IARPC Collaborations website that is open to anyone who wants to join. And the plan specifically focuses on places where those 16 federal agencies can collaborate. So it doesn't cover all of the research that's done by those agencies, just where together they might do more. So I think we're ready for the next slide. Thanks. So here they are. Those, there are 14 here, federal agencies plus the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy and the Office of Management and Budget. So it's kind of the gamut of agencies, a lot from the National Science Foundation to the Smithsonian, the Department of Interior, yeah, and the health agencies as well. Okay, now I'm ready to go on. So every 5 years, IARPC creates a new 5-year Arctic research plan. And it's, like I said, created in consultation with other groups outside of the federal government. And it identifies those areas where US Arctic, I think I already covered this actually, but I will just point out that this diagram on the right covers it's what is in the current Arctic research plan, how it's kind of divided up. We've got a chapter that focuses on sea ice, a chapter that focuses on marine ecosystems. So it's divided up mostly into disciplinary focuses. And we are changing this approach in the new Arctic research plan that is just in draft form right now. So I think I'm ready for the next slide. So the new strategy, which we'll be outlining in more detail, but just generally, there are fewer goals. So there's 4 priority areas as opposed to 9. And there is a stronger connection to the needs that have been articulated by Arctic communities. And there's also a stronger connection to the goals and missions of federal agencies. And we have built into the new plan the flexibility to respond to emergent issues. So one thing we struggled with in the last plan was things would come up. For example, there was the issues that came up in the Bering Strait region in terms of die-offs and food security issues that were not part of the plan when it was written, 5 years ago, but came up as a very strong, strong need. And we had to figure out, how do we address and respond to that when it's not written in the plan. So we're hoping that the new plan leaves more room for flexibility to respond and change and adapt when things do emerge. Okay.
This slide kind of got a little wonky.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is just, guess you can kind of see, I'll read them out in English here. We have written a couple years ago now, principles for conducting research in the Arctic, which are to be accountable, establish effective communication, respect Indigenous knowledge and cultures, build and sustain relationships, and pursue responsible environmental stewardship. And they're also written in Yupik. We had someone translate them generously for us. And these principles are incorporated into the current plan and will be incorporated into the next plan as well, to make sure that researchers are able to work responsibly and respectfully in the Arctic.
Yeah, apologies. Going from the Google Slides online to this one, it knocked a few things off.
Okay, so this is a timeline for the development of the Arctic Research Plan, this draft plan that we're discussing. So we're currently in the second public review phase. So that's the bolded part, the second one over from the right. And this phase will last until June 11th. So it's when the plan is out in the public, available for comment. And then after June 11th, IARPC will review and consider all of the input we've received and revise the plan. And we're aiming to release the final plan by the end of 2021.
All right. So what do we want you to know about the Arctic Research Plan 2022 to 2026? I know it's a lot to ask you to review a 20-page document. We've tried a new approach by attempting to communicate with more brevity and accessible language, though we still have a ways to go. So and restructuring Arctic research goals to focus on more cross-cutting, urgent, and timely issues. Let's see. Oh, thank you, Gay. And so these are things that we heard from the public comment period and are things that are relevant to Arctic communities and to federal agency missions. So with this new draft Arctic Research Plan, IARPC, a lot of acronyms, sorry, IARPC aims to be more responsive to Arctic communities by listening and including their ideas when identifying strategic priorities. And we'll continue to try to do this better. And so this new plan includes a 2-year implementation cycle that has the potential to provide relevant and timely information about federal agency work that can be used by decision makers at local, regional, and national scales. And warming in the Arctic region, I've said this before, is happening at twice the rate of the globe. And so we're heading in a new direction, and this graphic kind of shows how the Arctic Research Plan has been formed with the policy drivers and the priority areas, like Meredith said, from 9 down to 4, and I'll go into each of the policy drivers and priority areas, and then Meredith will go into the foundational activities. And so the policy drivers, there are 3 main components, which I just said in the graphic, and those are the policy drivers, priority areas, and foundational activities. And the policy drivers are critical areas of U.S. Arctic research policy that reflect longstanding U.S. interests in the Arctic and collective priorities of IARPC federal agencies. So the 4 are enhance well-being of Arctic residents, advance stewardship of the Arctic environment, strengthen national and regional security, and improve understanding of the Arctic as a component of planet Earth, so as a whole. And the 4 priority areas are community resilience, Arctic systems interactions, sustainable economies and livelihoods, and risk management and hazard mitigation. So these priority areas are intended to be cross-disciplinary and designed to respond to research challenges identified by Arctic communities. Along with federal agencies with a presence in Alaska, federal agencies with Arctic investments, the state of Alaska, and other non-federal partners. And I'll briefly go into each priority area. The first one is community resilience and health. This priority, the goal of this area is to improve community resilience and well-being by strengthening research and tools to increase understanding of interdependent social, natural, and built systems in the Arctic. And I apologize for all the text. This is for just to help with. So if you're later on, this is a copy for anybody who wasn't able to make it to the presentation. So The community resilience and health looks at the interconnected elements of community resilience. For example, how the scale and pace of climate, environmental, cultural, and socioeconomic change impact both resilience and health. It also seeks to help us better predict and understand stressors. The advances will lead to an improved understanding of the physical and social impacts of stressors and potential community responses. And this area will require working closely with Indigenous knowledge holders, state, local, and tribal authorities, and other Arctic nations. So there's much to be learned from tools developed outside of the Arctic that could be adapted to the Arctic context in this area. The second priority, Arctic systems interactions. This goal is to enhance our ability to observe, understand, predict, and project Arctic's dynamic interconnected systems and their linkages to the Earth system as a whole. And so why Arctic systems interactions? And I've said this multiple times throughout the presentation, and those of you that live in the Arctic, you know that it's the fastest changing region on Earth, and that the temperature has increased more than twice the global average. And this area strongly builds from work that IARPC already does. And it's looking at the interconnected, rapid, complex changes already occurring in the Arctic and how they influence each other. In order to predict our future Arctic and global change, we have to understand the human systems, natural systems, and larger Earth systems. So ultimately, this area seeks to advance understanding of the Arctic system and its connection to the Earth system as a whole. By increasing that understanding, we can better predict changes to the system. And so we can also support strategies that minimize negative impacts and take advantage of the opportunities of a changing Arctic. And work in this area will require enhanced two-way communication, coordination, and collaboration between decision makers, practitioners, non-federal researchers, international partners, and Indigenous communities. It's also strongly supported by existing IARPC collaboration teams. So I skipped one, apologies. I'll go back. Well, I'll go on to this one. So response to the warming, this is still the Arctic systems interactions priority area. This is important for feedbacks within the natural system that affect natural and human systems. And some of the examples are sea ice change and thawing permafrost, and also sea ice and water temperature change and how those affect the marine ecosystems and how they've shifted species distribution. And so a few of these teams are listed here, and I'll just name them out: atmosphere, glaciers and sea level, sea ice, permafrost, terrestrial ecosystems, marine ecosystems, permafrost is listed twice, coastal resilience, health and well-being, and physical oceanography.
Danielle, can I just interrupt quickly? Because I don't know that we really covered what the teams are.
Yeah, please go into them.
Yeah, so the teams that are listed here are many of the current teams. We've got teams that are composed of scientists and then other people who have expertise or are interested in these different kind of disciplinary areas. And they're structured around the way that the current plan is structured. Like I mentioned, we have a sea ice chapter, so we have a sea ice team. And we're hoping that these teams will fit into the new plan and work more together instead of working in their own disciplines. So that's why they're listed here, because all of these teams could play some role in this priority area.
Thank you, Meredith. Right, and so with this collaboration, and it's yielded successful results where the shared perspectives and questions regarding the Arctic's dynamic interconnected systems with a focus on ways to maximize monitoring, observing, analysis, and modeling capabilities to inform decision making. So it's created real world impacts. Everything we learned from this priority area also helps NOAA manage fisheries. It helps agencies plan for infrastructure that supports food security and also supports decision making. So it's understanding how the Arctic is changing helps us understand how the whole global system is changing. So the third priority area, I want to stop and make sure we don't have any questions or any comments.
Any question for, at this point, any question for Danielle or Meredith regarding what we've heard so far? So there are people trying to call in, and unfortunately, I'm even into the guts of Zoom, and the phone number doesn't seem, the phone line doesn't seem to be working. So anyway, you would have more. Nobody with a question at this point? All righty, take it away.
Thank you, Gay. All right, so the third priority area is sustainable economies and livelihoods. The goal of this priority area is to monitor, maintain, and proactively adapt the Arctic's natural, social, and built systems to promote sustainable economies and livelihoods. And so that would include infrastructure that could build environment or material things that enable people to live, travel, learn, and stay healthy. And this would also include information, basically what people need to know to live, travel, hunt, learn, and stay healthy. We need to know that the Arctic is changing rapidly and that the weather is unpredictable and permafrost thaw and breakup. And so having information on all of those things would be helpful for the communities out there. And so some of the activities in this priority area is to assess, build, and maintain the built environment of the Arctic. It would also include harbors and ports, water sanitation, monitoring and treatment facilities, weather stations to monitor and forecast, also airstrips, communication. I may be missing something, Meredith, if you want to add anything. No, you good? Okay. All right. These activities also include to monitor the natural processes and ecosystem services that underpin Arctic livelihoods, also provide communities with information they need to prioritize and make decisions. It would also include health of fish, or fisheries, water, air quality, and also weather, marine, aviation forecasts. So the health of fisheries would include monitoring contaminants such as trace metals like mercury or persistent organic pollutants. And also it would include monitoring village water quality, importance of water purifications and effective sanitation. And so, and then the weather forecasting, it would also help with decision making on, is it safe to fly, safe to go fishing, things like that. The last priority area is risk management and hazard mitigation. The goal of this priority area is to secure and improve quality of life through an understanding of disaster risk exposure, sensitivity to hazard and adaptive capacity. So with that, I will hand it over to Meredith.
Thanks, Danielle. Another component of the Arctic Research Plan, the draft plan, are foundational activities. So these are activities that are part of all of the priority areas that we just discussed. And so there are also activities that support a robust federal research program. And they, like I said, help advance each of the priority areas. And they're already, many of these foundational activities are already supported by existing IARPC collaboration teams. So I'll run through what the foundational activities are. A new one that we don't have an existing team for yet is co-production of knowledge and Indigenous-led research. There's also data management, education, monitoring, observing, modeling, and prediction, and technology, innovation, and application. So I'll just go briefly into kind of what is written in the draft plan about each of these. So for the co-production of knowledge and Indigenous-led research, we recognize that Arctic residents and Indigenous peoples have lived in the Arctic for generations. And given this, federally funded research and decision-making should be built upon and expand opportunities for co-production and Indigenous-led research, because activities initiated by and with Arctic residents and Indigenous knowledge holders are more likely to be effective and to effectively address local priorities and their solutions. Co-production of knowledge and Indigenous-led research would help to enable communication and coordination and sustain engagement and build trust. It would also put the principles for conducting research in the Arctic into practice, which we mentioned those earlier. It would increase the capacity within Arctic communities for Indigenous-led research. And data management. So data management is critical to research and monitoring and to the Northern community infrastructure and economies. And it's especially important in a time of rapid environmental change. So there's already a data team. And so we've got some kind of community of practice built there. And this foundational activity would be sharing best practices and innovative ideas and networking opportunities, and also working to proactively connect federal agencies, local partners, researchers, Indigenous knowledge holders, and others. Okay, education. So learning occurs through varied knowledge systems, and research and outreach are all about learning and gaining skills. And like we've mentioned, changing Arctic is an environment that requires new skills and understanding. So through the plan, IARPC will strive to increase the engagement of rural and Indigenous students in STEM education, generate academic workforce development opportunities, to enhance coordination among varied federal and external partners, and expand education and outreach to the public and decision makers, and hopefully create new and expanded ways to deliver this content. Okay, so this one is a lot. Monitoring, observing, modeling, and prediction, which this foundational activity will increase understanding of the Arctic system, and would work to understand the degree and direction of past and future changes, and generate actionable data forecasts and new research directions as well. And so through the IARPC plan and through this foundational activity, IARPC strives to identify current gaps in observational or modeling capabilities that hamper prediction of the Arctic system, promote international coordination, and also increase coordination with other federal efforts. Okay, and this is the last one. So here we are. Technology, innovation, and application. And this is a new one, as well as the co-production of knowledge and Indigenous-led research. And this one focuses around modernizing infrastructure, improving accuracy, increasing autonomous data collection, and accelerated information delivery. So IARPC in the plan as it's written now will strive to identify technological solutions that accelerate progress for priority research areas, convene agencies and partnerships to design solutions, to determine common technology needs, and to provide improved technology services as identified by Arctic communities. And so that wraps up the overview of the plan, the policy drivers, the priority areas, and the foundational activities. It is a lot. So any question, no matter how basic you feel it might be, I think is very appropriate. But we'll just kind of wrap up by telling you how you can comment on the draft plan. So we are accepting comments through June 11th and are specifically looking for comments on priority area goals, the justifications for those goals and potential partners, also on foundational activities and on the implementation of the plan and metrics. And we appreciate and welcome all of your thoughts on the draft plan.
And so there are quite a few ways to comment, and I'll go back one slide. We've talked with a number of people. They've had questions about how to comment or what to comment on. And so it's a good reminder. Somebody was wanting to comment on changes in ice or their ice cellars. And so it's a very good comment to provide, but in framing it in a way where research could possibly be done is a wonderful way to provide comment and with things like that when you're on the ground and seeing changes, like thinking about what would you want to be researched. And so there's ways to comment. You can submit through the Federal Register notice. You can email IARPC plan at nsf.gov. You can also leave a voicemail, and the numbers here are 703-783-1658. There's also a toll-free number, and these are limited to 5 minutes, but you can call as many times as you want and continue to leave 5-minute comments. And there, you can also submit hard-written copies to Roberto Delgado. And so what happens with the comments after they're submitted? After the comment period closes, federal agency staff will review and consider the input and revise the plan as necessary. And by law, the revisions have to be done specifically by federal agency employees. And we will make all the comments submitted through the mechanisms in the FRN and responses publicly available with attribution on the IARPC collaborations website. And so if there are any questions, you can also reach out to Nikush Carlo, who is IARPC's Plan Development Director at nikush.carlo@gmail.com, or you can also email the IARPC Secretariat at plan@iarpccollaborations.org. The main web page is tinyurl /Arctic plan, and you can also download the PDF. Sorry about this. There's one more information session that is on June 2nd. That's at 10 a.m. Alaska time, and the information could be found on the website. It's just another informational session, and there's a small question and discussion portion at the end, but it's a great place to listen to more, just gain a little bit more information on the plan. All the webinars that have already been done are recorded, and you can listen to it through audio, or through the recording on the website as well. And so with that, thank you so much for your time. And if
Thank you,
have-
Danielle, and thank you, Meredith. So are there any questions from the audience as to what is IARPC and also this process? I know I have a question, but I'll wait and see. Give everyone else a chance first. You're getting a thank you, some nice thank yous from in the chat box. And I do recommend anybody who's on, it's always nice to get some love back from the audience as well as questions. So that's Marina, thank you so much for that. Now, Danielle, you had mentioned you wanted to have some dialogue.
Yeah, and I think Rick has a hand up.
Perfect. Go ahead, Rick.
Thanks very much for this. This is really quite informative. One question that I have, and I think this is a perennial issue, but hopefully can start to address this. You know, federal research and local community needs are often at very different scales. Research, not always, but generally is at large scales. And local communities in Alaska need information at that normally, or for much of the time, at that very local scale. Does IARPC have any thoughts on bridging that, bringing the research, making it usable at that local level? Thank you.
I'll hand it over to Meredith or even, I don't know if Larry is a participant or could possibly chime in as well.
Participants can chime in.
Sure, I'd love to. Meredith, do you want to take it?
No, I was going to hand it to you. That's a tough question, Rick.
It is a tough question, but you know, it's if you look at the research that's been done in the past 10 years, we've really been focused on questions about, you know, the physical processes, what's driving sea ice change, the biologic processes, you know, how is the vegetation changing, and you know, how does that affect climate? And we're, you know, we've not really been looking at community level questions. However, this time we really are. So we're still looking at the big issues as far as we still want to know about, you know, how the changes in sea ice and how the changes in the vegetation are affecting the energy distribution and how that'll affect climate and weather. So we're still looking at that. But this time we're also taking on more community level questions. So we're really trying to address, sorry, I'm out in the wind here. We're also trying to address the community needs, the needs of the individual. And you know, Rick, you say that that those are kind of on global scales, but you know, it is surprising in as far as, you know, the issues that a lot of the communities that are facing in Nome and Barrow are some of the same issues that people in Kaktovik are facing. And believe it or not, a lot of the same issues that they're facing in Eastern Canada and Western Greenland. And so a lot of these issues, a lot of this work that we hope to do, we hope it'll benefit people from around the globe. And so, I mean, I'm sorry, around the Pan-Arctic. We hope it will really help the people, the residents of the Arctic. And so there, if you look at the questions, so we've got, as they just described them, we've got 4 big priority areas we're going after, and 3 of the 4 are really focused on community level needs and helping the residents of the far north. So I'll stop there. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Larry.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you. Any other questions on this? Because I know I've got one, and my question, I think I've been to one of these, and I'll ask it again. So I think Rick kind of touched on something about, you know, these are when you showed the slide with the 14 federal agencies, they're pretty big, like NASA and, you know, Department of Interior and whatnot. And I just wonder if there's, so say I used fresh water before, you know, we have communities that don't have access to fresh water, you know, on a regular basis. They've got to haul everything by hand and whatnot. So, or we don't have the internet very well. So there are other efforts that obviously haven't worked out, and there's still basic needs. And does this plan kind of look to see like what efforts are really good that people really want, that they can, or management of marine mammals, right, or birds or whatever, that haven't worked well? Is there, but the research is needed, and it's not something new, it's something that's every day. Is that in the plan, to look to see what are the research efforts or needs, both either at the federal or the state level, that the communities need, that just haven't hit the mark? It hasn't worked. And yet we still have the need. Is that being looked at, like a way to sort of look at what hasn't worked, but is still a priority? And I guess that's the question. Thank you.
I'd love to take it. Can I? Do you mind?
Sure, go ahead, Larry. I'm
Okay,
taking notes,
okay.
so I'm trying to capture the questions and then answer when I can, but please go ahead.
Okay, well, thanks, Gay. You know, and I understand and appreciate everything you're saying, except what I'd like you to do is also think about over the last, you know, where were we 30 years ago? And, you know, you're right, there's a lot of things that haven't worked, but, you know, there's been a lot of good work, and, you know, we know a lot more than we did 30 years ago. So there's a lot of good work that's been done. And, you know, you talk about the internet, and I agree with you, you know, broadband is sorely needed, you know, but look what we've got now. We've got something. We're far ahead where we were 30 years ago. We're not where we want to be, but, you know, we're working on it. We're trying to get there, you know. So I guess, so that's one thing I'll say, is that, you know, there's some stuff that hasn't worked out. Absolutely. You know, and you know, particularly with respect to, I guess I can talk about a lot of things, but you know, I think about waterfowl, as you just mentioned, or, you know, migratory, those, songbirds, migratory songbirds, you know, that there's some things that have really gone wrong, not just in the research that we've done, but also just in the global habitats for migratory waterfowl. And we've got some problems that we haven't resolved yet. And unfortunately, that's reality, and we've got some big issues to continue working on. But there's some things that have gone right. But as far as, you know, what you were talking about, what people really need, you know, what people really want, you know, that's why we're having this listening session. That's what we're asking. You know, what do we need to work on? You know, and what are your recommendations for how we should take this forward and how we should implement it? So, you know, we're asking the questions, and we're doing our best to resolve them. So these 4 questions these 4 priority areas that were put forward, that were described, those were based upon the solicitation from people in Alaska and people in the Arctic or around the world, as far as what are their urgent research needs. And we hosted a workshop in September with about 100 people, and we had quite a few residents of Alaska who were involved in that. And these are the topics that they put forward that we should be attacking. And so hopefully they're the right topics, but, you know, there's still a lot of tweaking we can do in there. So if you have good ideas, you know, give them to us. You know, we'll do our best to implement it. Now I'll stop there. But thanks,
All
Kate.
right. Thank you, Larry. And Austin, I saw you had your hand up. Welcome.
Yeah, so IARPC essentially scoped the plan in 2019, 2020 with those workshops that you mentioned, Larry. And, you know, that was during a different the Trump administration. You know, now we're in a different administration. I guess I'm wondering, to what extent did the Trump administration scope the plan as it is drafted now, if it did at all? And then has the Biden administration given any kind of indication that it'll put a halt or delay delay implementation of a new plan? The Biden administration is looking at, the Biden administration looked closely at things that were done at the 11th hour under the Trump administration. Is this plan one of these things that are up for review and such? Does it fall under the Biden's executive order, or will things proceed as I guess as you had thought?
So no, this one is best for me to take too. So you're right, Austin, and hi, good to see you again. So I did start in this job. So I'm in the Office of Science Technology Policy, which is in the White House, and that's my job. I did start there a year ago. I was at I've been in Alaska for almost 40 years. I was at the University of Alaska for 35 years. So I started in the White House a year ago under the Trump administration, and the Trump administration really kept a hands-off tact on what we're doing. And like I said, the 4 priority areas of the foundational activities, they all came out of the community input and from that workshop. And there was zero deviation or editorial changing from the Trump administration as we moved it forward. The Biden administration has also played a much closer role in this, but they haven't changed anything. All they've done is they've emphasized that we should be concerned and really address issues of equity and racial equality. And so they're much more concerned about that. And they've also elevated climate so that they're really concerned about that and the impacts on people. So they're really concerned about rural communities and how the work that we're doing actually benefits people. And so I think, all I can say is that, I think they've been really good things that have come out of this. And so I'm real happy with the way things are going. But and I guess one last thing I want to say is what's really interesting. So Danielle started talking about the 4 drivers, or 4 or 5 policy drivers that we've got, and we did a real extensive study on those as far as what the policies of the administration were, and we looked at the last 50 years, and the one policy driver as far as looking at how the Arctic fits into the global system, that's really come to be a priority in the last 20 years. But the other policy drivers have been consistent. The US policy in the Arctic has been consistent for the last 50 years. And so that's what we're using to guide us. And, I think the US direction towards the Arctic is consistent, and that's a good thing. We're concerned about well-being of residents and understanding the system and trying to help residents do a better job. But, as Gay said a few minutes ago, there's things we haven't done well. And so if you want to point those out and tell us what we should be doing better, that would be welcome. So I'll stop there. Thanks.
All right. Rick, you still have your hand up. I don't know if that's you have another question?
No, sorry, I forgot to put it down.
I do that. I mute myself all the time and start trying to talk. Thanks, Austin. Marina or anyone else have a question on the Arctic research plan? I guess I have another question.
No question for me.
No question, Marina?
No questions for me.
All right, thank you so much, and thank you for attending. So if we were to write in the Federal Register, ship traffic, of course, is a big something that 30 years ago we didn't really have the type of traffic we have. I'm just kind of curious on the system. So if we say we're worried about large vessel noise bothering the marine mammals swimming and potentially having a tough effect on subsistence opportunities, so human food security issue, what would happen to that comment? That goes in, and does that then go to whom? Does that, because it might be Walrus, it goes to the Department of Interior, or is it sort of an overarching? How would some comment? I mean, how does it work when you put your comment in?
I can answer that question. So we take the comments and we put them in a spreadsheet, and depending on the length of the comment and that kind of thing, we figure out where it applies if it's not specifically stated in the like if it's not referring to a line number, we figure out if it applies to priority area 3 or 4. And in the revision process, the comments that apply to each of the priority areas will be given to the writers who wrote the draft, and will be revising it. So those comments will go to the writers for them to incorporate in the revisions for each section.
So it then would go in, and then if I was Coast Guard, I guess, would be one of the federal entities, or if I was the Marine Mammal Commission, so they'll see something like that, and then they will see you, Jim Dory, and they will then say, we need to do research on this. This is, how would it be, how does it get sorted out to be elevated, a priority? Or even, is that at a regional priority or a topic? I honestly have no idea, so I'm curious.
Maybe I'll jump in for just a second if you don't mind, Meredith. So I guess one thing is, the plan doesn't cover all the research that is ongoing. So BOEM does a lot of that type of research, and you're right, the Marine Mammal Commission does a lot of type of that research. What IARPC takes on, what's in this plan, is where there's a benefit for the different federal agencies to work together. And so if this is not a, where there's a benefit from a collaboration, then it's probably not going to make it into the plan. And so, and also there's just a tremendous amount of, we can't do everything. There's a tremendous amount of work that's being done by other groups. And so there are, other activities that they will take on. As far as, subsurface, subsea noise, I don't know if that will be something that we will do. However, those questions, it is good to still submit them, because you're right, the Marine Mammal Commission will see them, and we can still elevate it as an urgent issue. I don't know if that's going to be part of the work that makes it into this Arctic research plan, but that doesn't mean it doesn't get addressed by somebody somewhere.
So it gets sorted. I'm sorry to be so ignorant of the thing, but so then, okay, so everybody, all those agencies are looking at the comment of subsurface noise or ship traffic or whatever it is, commercial fishing, whatever. So the agency will see those comments, and then NOAA may say, oh, that's ours, because we've got NOAA species that might be affected. Department of Interior would say that's ours because they have Department of Interior species that might be infected. Coast Guard would say maybe that's ours from a national security point of view, having all these noises, and we've got equipment or whatever they've got down there, or whichever country it is. We're in the Bering Strait region. And then because they see it in this plan or in the comments, it'll then become like it'll elevate those so that those will become a priority that individually the agencies are going to comment on or think, wow, we need to grab that, and we'll then turn to all the 14 other partners and say, who wants to do this? Or is this is something that's so broad spanning across all our agencies that we need to join hands? Do you know what I'm not being very eloquent on this?
I do. And no, you did well. And it really depends on what the issue is and how it goes forward. So you're all right as far as the Bering Sea ecosystem changes that occurred over the last few years. Those were elevated in that manner to IARPC, and there was a lot of concern across all the agencies about that. The way such questions will, as Danielle described, all those questions are going to be compiled. All those concerns, all those recommendations are going to be compiled, and all the, how we will address those will be also input into that matrix. And then all of that information is shared with all of the IARPC agencies. And so the ones that we are able to address, they will know about that. And the ones that we're not able to address, they will also know about that, and they'll have the matrix. How they take it forward at that point, the stuff that we can't do, I don't know. We don't have any control over that. That'll be up to the individual agency. But what we will focus on will be defined in our after we get through the Arctic Research Plan, we will define a biennial implementation plan. We'll describe explicitly what we're going to do there. And so those questions, you'll know, the other agencies will know exactly what we're going to take on and exactly what we're not going to do. Hope that kind of describes it, kind of
Kind of,
responds.
it just sounds like then
is that a good
everyone's
enough?
on there. Everyone's on, it might be that you could have a big impact if you have a broad statement, because everyone will, that's something national security, because we have large vessels and we don't have any kind of support system in the Bering Strait region until we can get an icebreaker built and back up here, which is, we've just been told that won't happen until 2026. And so we are going to take on all these wintertime travelers now, is my understanding. In the Bering Strait, we take them on completely vulnerable. Right. So what kind of research, or, what kind of research can even be done?
I just don't. Yeah, I understand what
and
you're
so-
saying. And
so
you,
it
if
sounds
you,
like- It just
Go
sounds
ahead.
like IARPC, maybe your role is in, when we comment, is to sort of help guide these agencies.
to guide,
what
not
is needed?
the agents. Well, yeah, that's true too. Yes. So if you highlight the priorities and things that are urgent questions, that will be helpful for not just for our plan, but also for the other agencies to know that this is an issue that they have to address. Whether they do or not, we don't have any control. All we can take on
Okay.
are the issues where there is benefit from the agencies working together. If we can get the agencies collaborating with, not just between the agencies, but also with university researchers and international researchers. If we can get people working together on a common problem, then we can make a huge advance. We can make a lot of progress. If we can get a large group of researchers working together on a specific topic, that's where IARPC really does produce great benefits.
Okay, thank you. All right.